Seconds, minutes.
Is this on? Yes, it's on. Good morning, everyone. It's 8th September 2023, and I would like to welcome everyone at the final meeting of the jury of Giornata degli Autori Wednesdays 2023. The goal of today's final deliberation meeting is to arrive to choosing the winner, the big winner of the Giornata degli Autori Directors Award. It's a tradition that before the jury moves on to discussing the three final films, which you guys selected yesterday, the space is given to the 7 films which unfortunately didn't make it into the final, but they've been thoroughly discussed. And I would like to thank to the 7 volunteers. Each of the 7 of you will introduce the 7 films in question before we move on to discussing the final 3. So I'd like to ask Maya to start talking briefly about The Oceans Are the Real Continents.
Thank you. Yeah. Oceans of the Real Continents is the first film that we saw in the section of the Giornata degli Autori, and it was a great way to start it off. So big thanks to the whole team behind the film. It is a visually extremely beautiful film with shots that lingered in our minds long after the film was finished. So also big props to the cinematographer and their team. It hooks you with the cinematography, and it's also a beautiful story about change and separation seen through the lens of 3 different perspectives. But the connection between these characters and the perspectives were, however, not that clear for the jury, which caused some confusion for us and left the plot a bit unclear. We wish that the characters' storylines had interlaced a bit more and that the film's message was a bit clearer, but we really enjoyed watching this film, and it's something it's a film that a lot of us will remember.
Thank you. Sidonie au Japon, Adam, please.
One cannot deny that Sidonie in Japan has bold stylistic choices, and that as usual, Isabelle Huppert is amazing. It shows a different side of grief, and the setting of the film is simply breathtaking. And while initially we as a jury got to really like both Sidonie as a character and her journey, I think that the only problem for us that it's later on loses some of its good initial momentum.
Thank you, Adam. Sobre todo de noche. Axel, please.
Our jury would like to thank the director of Sobre todo de noche, Foremost at Night, for introducing us to a compelling tale of contemporary resistance, and also for inviting us to rethink our definition of family through a deeply touching trio of characters. While we appreciated the powerful cinematography, we did find that the complexity of the visuals occasionally disrupted the narrative flow. We were also hoping that the dense and engaging rhythm of the introduction would be maintained consistently throughout the entire film.
Thank you, Axel. Svetla, please, can you share a few thoughts on Snow in Midsummer?
So, Snow in Midsummer adopted a very distinctive style to tell a story that should have never been forgotten in the first place. So, it does the work of remembering. And I think we all believe that it has a strong voice, but not a clear enough one. We felt a bit distant to the action and the characters, making it difficult to, at points, emotionally connect. But despite this, I think that the tenderness of the film will stay with us.
Thank you very much, Svetla. Backstage will be presented by Pau.
We think that the backstage idea is one of the most interesting of the whole competition, how emotions can be told through movement and physicality. Most of us were mesmerized by the first scene and were on the edge of our seats during the beginning of the movie, but felt that as the film progressed, it lost momentum. maybe trying to talk about too many characters that in some cases lacked motive or were not developed enough. We feel that if the movie focused in less characters, in less dancers, maybe we could have seen them in more depth and see a clear evolution after their night in the forest. We also want to appreciate how the sound was very physical in some moments during the dance scenes, because it was in those moments that we could feel a little bit closer to the insides of each performer.
Thank you. Dora will talk a little bit about following the sound.
There's a collective sense of comfort that we felt watching the film, and I think most of us, after leaving the screening, felt a bit more light into our hearts. The film was also a very interesting territory for us to debate what cinema should be or what cinema should do nowadays, and how we might privilege or not narration over emotion. And it was very interesting for us to debate on the occasion of the film, perhaps even our own biases. We found the film very subtle, perhaps a bit too subtle at times, and we feel that it might have resonated more with some of us, but also the others of us might have enjoyed a bit more things to cling onto. So I think that would be.
Thank you very much, Dora. And finally, the summer with Carmen. I'll ask Klaas to present the film and the discussion.
What we really liked about Summer with Carmen was the unapologetic representation of the characters. We loved how playful it was and the campy humor. It felt like a true celebration of queerness that was clearly very genuine. However, we felt like the movie lost momentum after a while. The meta aspect of the movie got a bit too played out in our opinion, and we were hoping for more twists on cliches.
Thank you very much. So, why don't we move to discussing the final three films that you all selected yesterday? We have a selection of three very interesting debuts by female directors, and one of them is Milk from the Netherlands. The other one is Quitter la Nuit, which is a co-production of Belgium, Canada, and France. And the last one is Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person from Quebec, mostly. I'd like to open the debate on Milk. You know the procedure. Feel free to discuss, convince each other, argue. This is the final chance. Who wants to start? Lucia.
I think we all agreed upon this story, that it was strong and that it represented something that we all were interested in, and it told the story a little bit differently. But in my opinion, it kind of lost momentum towards the end, and that's the thing I don't like. And to me, there was a bit too much sound of it, but I think that might be because the sound was too loud in the cinema. And that's my opinion on it.
Jonas.
I'd like to add a bit to that, since being one of the ones who really voiced my opinion about Milk pretty early on, I feel like it's a very great story that tackles of course, the problem of grief, as do many of the films in this selection. But this is one I feel that does it best in this case. It really explores the silent way of dealing with grief and loss, and how do you deal with loss even if the people around you who know you best can say nothing and can do nothing about it. And to kind of a bit maybe antagonize you, I really enjoyed the sound design, even though it was a bit loud. I think also João Pedro has mentioned that they tuned the volume down during the film as well. But I really liked the sound design. I felt it really immersed me more into this very visceral action that the character was going through, which is pumping milk from her breasts. And I feel like it's a very emotional film. While not saying a lot in dialogue, it still does a lot for me.
Aga.
Thank you. Is it working? Yeah. Okay. I just need to keep it extra close to my mouth. I think some themes were underdeveloped or even unmentioned, whereas I think they should have been included more prominently. And drawing on what Jonas said, the silence of the film, which I think was a big asset, but at some points that the silence was too loud and it should have been mentioned, addressed. I think, for example, the relationship between the spouses and their separate ways of dealing with the loss. The focus was just on the mother, whereas I think it should have also been on the father, and it was just completely absent, which I think is a downside of the movie. Nevertheless, I do think it deserves to be in the final three, and I do appreciate that the uniqueness of the story. It's unlike anything that I've seen before on the screen or off the screen, actually.
Svetla.
I think I'll have to disagree with you. I feel like there doesn't need to be an explicit relationship between the two spouses, or like a depiction of how the husband goes through the grief process. I think it's okay for a film to deal with one character and their loss without having to explore the relationship that they have with everyone else, or like how everyone else deals with that loss. And I think it is actually, for me, very beautiful that it was a very simple story. It was about a mother, her loss, and having to deal with 20 liters of milk coming out of her breast. And I think it is okay to be silent, and it is okay to have just one relationship to explore within the film.
You wanted to react, Aga?
Yeah, I wanted to comment that because I think it's absolutely okay. It's good that it's focused on the woman. All I'm saying is that some balance would not hurt, or maybe so addressing that the man exists, because I feel like he was there, but he wasn't there, and he was like a paper character, just like put in the background for decor, and he appeared in the plot, but he didn't contribute to it at all. There was like one scene when I think they were like eating on the sofa, and that is as far as I can remember his involvement in the plot. I don't think it would have been beneficial to treat them equally, because the plot was very like heavily leaning towards the experiences of the woman, which was its premise, and it should not have been compromised. I agree. Nevertheless, I am convinced that it would have gained more depth if the spouse character was a tiny bit more developed, just to give the context.
You want to answer, Svetla?
Okay, yeah, I do want to answer.
Yeah.
I think to some degree, I feel like yes, that is true, but also I feel like his absence wasn't in any way because it's not an absence. He is there with her. He's just very silent, and he gives her space, which I believe is a good way for the film to show that their relationship is very stable, and that she can be alone and going through those emotions because he understands and he lets her, and he doesn't need to be developed in the film in that way, I guess, for me.
Nikita. Behind you.
Thank you. Well, on a slightly different topic, I think I have this almost like primate level understanding of cinema, in that if there is repetition of some action, if we're introduced to routine and we see, the same act being repeated more than once, then there better be a really good compensation at the end, because I've already seen it, And I think quite a few films in the section have done this, like the backstage, snow in midsummer, they're following the sound, right? And I think Milk does it the best. I feel like I get most reward for, you know, for the director running a bit of a risk for me to get bored by seeing the same process 3-4 times. And here I understand why it's done, and I think it's done well. It's a really immersive experience where we can see the obsession of the young woman with like doing something about the loss. Although, to finish my statement, something that we didn't really discuss last time, and I wonder what your opinion is, but why she was doing what she was doing. You know, is loss a necessary prerequisite for this? Or is it a story of more of finding meaning in life rather than dealing with loss? Because she that was desperate to become useful for society, for someone else. And how losing a child was it like absolutely necessary for this plot development? I'm not sure.
Maya?
I raised my hand previously to disagree with you as well. I didn't mind that that her partner wasn't that big of a like character in the film. I thought it was great as well because one of the things we talked about previously that I think some of us agreed on, that like the one of the main characters like Milk, like literally Milk as well. So like there's space for these two main characters and their relationship together, the woman and the Milk. But then I also wanted to like talk a bit about the repetition as well, because I didn't really enjoy it that much. Like I get like what the intention was, and I do also think that like it was executed like all right. I mean, in comparison to other things I've seen before. But I was always like kind of just hoping for something like new to happen. So it got a bit too repetitive for me, in my opinion.
Luca?
I might have to disagree with you, Nikki, in the sense that I felt like I didn't get close enough to the characters or to the character to feel emotionally invested enough to appreciate the silence that was going on. I felt too distant and I found it not the visuals just not compelling enough to keep me engaged with the story. So it didn't touch me. I think this is a story that I would enjoy more reading because it feels like a story that's small, and I think it didn't touch me because I was in a cinema with so many people on the big screen but didn't get close enough to the characters. For me it feels smaller, and it didn't work for me in this format.
Jonas?
I would just like to reply to Nikki. I really agree with you, but as much as I like this film, I do feel that this motive of repetition is very effective until it isn't. Because at some point, I do feel that the momentum, which has been mentioned before as well, the momentum does wind down and it falls a bit flat with the ending, although I understand the theme of the main character wanting to exhibit this care in any direction she can, and that's why she gets quite desperate during the film, starting out with trying to give her milk to the hospitals who won't accept it, and then moving on to more guerrilla methods, as one would say, which I really liked. But like the fact that the main character, in the end, the way she actually pawns the milk off to someone quite unwillingly, it falls a bit flat for me, and I fail to see the poetic sense in that.
Agnes?
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on what you said there, Luca, about the characters and how we feel close to them. Because I kind of I agree with you, and also I find in the way that you said, Maya, that the milk becomes a character as well. I find it interesting that in the beginning it was very, as an audience member, I felt very like exposed to this grief, and it was so tangible, and I really felt for her as a mother that she has to go through this, and it's a great loss. But I think, and I'm also kind of split in this decision that when the story progresses, in the way that the kind of obsession with this milk and this almost like character of the milk becomes even more extreme, in the same way I feel like it's such a close bond between them two that we, almost like the husband, get a bit pushed off. It's almost like the audience also gets a little bit pushed off, in my opinion. I felt a little bit, and it made it harder for me to relate and get closer and kind of keep that relationship all until the end of the story. But in a way, I kind of also appreciate this extreme bond that is formed between this physical matter that's still so close to you as well.
Dora?
Uh, so I like to comment on what you're saying about getting pushed way a bit as an audience. In a way, I'm kind of enjoying that in terms of, first of all, I think the film is doing a very good job in not manipulating you to feel sorry for a character that it would be so easy to feel sorry for just given the circumstance and where the film starts. And I'm really enjoying that it's not adding any music that will make you cry. And I'm also enjoying the distance in terms of grief. And when in real life, when you're grieving, when you're suffering, we're often very horrible people. We push people away. We don't tend to let them in. And also, grief is a very repetitive process. It's nothing that when you deal with it, it's rare to have like a climatic moment where maybe sometimes you break down, but you know it's a very monotonous experience. I really appreciate this film picking up on that in a manner that is discreet and perhaps even true to reality, because very often again with films of this theme or of this subject, I think a lot of filmmakers look into delivering like that perfect moment where everything falls down and there's like a cathartic explosion of this grief hidden inside. And this one doesn't have that in such a visceral way that you feel the narrative was constructed to get to that point. It's more natural and organic, I think, in a way that, again, might be closer to real life.
Rahel?
I wanted to refer to your question, Nikki, you asked at the end of your statement about whether loss is crucial to the film. And for me, it definitely is. It's its essence. It's not about being like helpful to society, not at all. For me, it wasn't about the others for her. It was just about her dealing with this child she won't have for now, and like finding a way to take care of something that is there, but it's not a child, it's just that what is left of it, and to find a way to express like her feelings in a way. And yeah, therefore it's absolutely crucial. And I wanted to point out something else that hasn't been mentioned yet, the nature, like the her going out into nature and this opposite of this hospitalized environment, also at home, and this being able to breathe outside and to find a way to escape, which was like really beautifully done for me.
Aga?
I quite enjoyed the repetition because I saw it as a way of mirroring what was happening to the protagonist, because her routine became very repetitive to the extent that she was bored with her life and wanted to come back to work desperately and needed to do something with her time. Nevertheless, I think if there was a little bit less of it and the film was a little bit shorter, it wouldn't have lost anything. It would have gained, in my opinion, because it would have been a tiny bit more dynamic without losing that repetition aspect, which I think is crucial and was very much intended to make us feel the way we did. But the extent of it, I think, unfortunately, also caused boredom, which is the collateral damage.
Jonas?
to speak, and I hope for the final time in support of this film. There's one honorable mention about this film that I really like to make, which is the scenes where the character is pouring her breast milk that's still warm down the drain. She's literally pouring her only utility and her only like way of caring and this only symbol that she has left of this child that she has lost, which is me also speaking in support of Rahel's statement that I feel loss is very necessary for this film, and that those scenes really initially pulled me into it because the acting, the directing in those scenes I felt was very, very, very strong. And I feel like that every single viewer potentially could identify with that moment, even if they were not a mother or a father, because it's such a literal scene with such authentic emotions. And I really wanted to mention that before we finish talking about this film.
Last four would be Lucia, Maria, Klaas, and Adam, before we move on to the next film. Lucia?
Something I think we mentioned in previous discussions but haven't really touched upon today is the quietness of her and her inability to speak to her close ones, but to feel better when she's outside of her space, of her friends, of her familiar things, in the forest with the man she met and hasn't spoken to, but still has a connection with him through the quietness, and how she goes through all these feelings through the quiet, and how sometimes the quiet can really help. Sometimes people expect us to talk about our feelings, to talk about everything, but sometimes to really feel the things you need to feel, you need the quiet. So I really appreciated that part of the film where they're just walking through the forest and she's smiling at the man she doesn't know anything about, but it's delivering her comfort in a way that maybe someone who she knows and cares about cannot. So I really appreciated the part, and I felt it being really realistic to for her to kind of make herself scarce in her private life, but with someone who she doesn't know and someone who doesn't know her story, she felt more comforted because she wasn't different and looked upon as sad or something grieving.
Maria?
I was thinking a lot during the discussions and after the first meeting that we had about this movie. And I'm convinced that Luca has put it into words perfectly for me personally, because I feel like the idea that I feel like it would be more developed and we could get to the character a lot more close if it was a written piece. Because I feel like even though I can completely understand and make sense of the silence and make sense of the also what I think Dora said about pushing people away when you're grieving, I feel like when I find myself in situations where I'm in a loss or a separation or just any kind of traumatic experience, even though I can isolate myself from other people, I know that I have a really intense inner dialogue, inner dialogue in my consciousness, which says a lot of different things, and it can be mean to me, it can be nice to me, but it's the whole process that I'm dealing inside of myself is a lot more intense than what can be seen in the external world. So I feel like that pushed me away from the character a lot. And even though I think that one of the first things that I said when I like during the first discussion was that I feel like this topic is so underrepresented and so meaningful, and also for me I'm feeling that only in the last couple of years I realized how often it happens. I feel like yeah, I didn't get a lot from the movie, and for me it was a missed opportunity and a missed potential. Even though I just really wanted to like it, I really wanted to root for the film. So I feel like yeah, the silence for me was not effective, even though I understood it. But I felt like in terms of cinematic storytelling, maybe you can find other ways to convey what's happening inside as well, which I think is really important. So,
Adam?
Thank you. I think what I truly really like this movie about this movie is that it was really subtle, and it feels to me like it's the opposite of manipulative. I really enjoy that there's no usual cliche of the main character having her lowest point and I like that we are never given like a big monologue from her, and I think that this subtlety is also the reason why some of us can't connect with the character. But I connected with her quite a bit. I think it's a very subjective movie, which is something that also has to be appreciated. But also, what many people pointed out, I truly, truly think that this movie would have been brilliant if it was shorter. I think if you could manage to get condensed milk, it would be sorry, it would be brilliant. Thank you.
Famous Slovak sense of humor. Klaas, please conclude the debate on milk.
Well, I wanted to plus one on Adam, honestly. I thought it was very true. This felt like a family that could live next to me, and it felt like the grief of a real person.
Thank you. Quitter la nuit, through the night. Who would like to start the debate on the second film? Lucia, it's yours.
Here I am again. When we saw the film, I think we all loved it. And then after thinking about it more, some people's opinions changed, but mine really hasn't. I'm a big defender of this film. So some of us in previous discussion, I want to start off by saying that since the film started, like the first minute, I was engaged, and I stayed that way till the very end. I haven't felt bored throughout the film. I was always waiting for the next part, for to find out more, to find out how she's feeling and everything similar with that. But some of us discussed the last scene where Dory comes and he asks for forgiveness and stuff like that, and people were kind of mad because he was represented as someone who maybe needed forgiveness or something like that. And I think I realized that I've seen it as something we should be mad about, that film wants us to be mad about, because he did something really bad, and he came there and he was looking for forgiveness, but he doesn't deserve it. He did that to her, and he did it willingly, and he knew what he was doing. And grief 2 years later and stuff like that, I don't think he deserved forgiveness. And I think we have a right to feel mad at him and not give him forgiveness. And I think that's just another one of emotions that this film evoked in me. So yeah. And
Cecilia.
Yes, I totally agree with what Lucia just mentioned. A lot of people brought up this issue that they felt like the film was kind of like justifying, or like again, the last scene was confusing for a lot of people in this sense. I didn't feel at all that the director was trying to make the rapist appear in this light of wanting us to forgive him. Not at all. I never forgave him throughout the film, but I thought it was very realistic the way he was depicted, because often when we think of these issues like sexual assault, there is this very this narrative of like just a person attacking a woman in the street, like a stranger, but most of who's like a monster lurking in the dark. But often what happens is very different. It could be someone close to the victim, or even like in the film showed at the beginning, you know, they were interacting and he looked like a normal guy, and the character was who was potentially attracted to him but just didn't want to continue. And then the situation turned really dramatically, and he in that moment he became the monster. But I thought it was very interesting how she showed his life outside of it, and also his relationship with the mom. That really triggered me. How the mother really was blinded by the love for her son, and was not wanting to believe it, even when he himself spoke up the truth to her. I believe for me the film was really crucial in the way it was showing the process. of this, which the woman went through from reporting the violence to the police, the length of it, I really felt like the film was showing how long and difficult this process was. What really for me was very strong was in the beginning when after the woman was saved by the police and she is interrogated, when she's asked open questions, and then after she opens up, struggling about, she opens up about what happened, and she get asked why. That for me was extremely triggering, and because why would you ask why to the victim of what happened to her? Like there is no why, and why is she asked why? And you see parallel the interrogation of the rapist, and he's not asked why right away. And I thought that was, in that moment, I felt really disturbed. And I felt like the film wanted me to feel this way. And at the end, I have seen when he goes to her door, she turned this question against him. She's asking why, and he has no answer. So I thought for me that was empowering, and it switched the situation. And overall, I think this film was very powerful, and I don't see problematic aspect to it, and I really empathize with the protagonist. And yes.
Thank you. Axel?
I would like to start saying I really liked something about this film is to show how most of the time the victim knows the rapists really well. They're mostly someone from the family or a friend of a friend. So I really like that it raised this question and sort of reversed the stereotype that most rape happen, by a stranger in the streets. That being said, I thought this film really lacked generosity, especially in terms of characters. I felt this friendship with the woman from the call center I didn't follow it really well, and they met at the very end, and then you feel forced to go with it, and you don't really have time to understand exactly why they would be so close. And I was also very disturbed by the contradiction that we know from the very beginning that the main character is a victim, but still there's some sort of justification because at some point the rape scene is shown, and so you're thinking, oh, okay, so she was raped from the beginning. And so I don't like the fact that her position was adopted and justified by this scene.
Maya?
Yes, I really enjoyed the film. I really enjoyed the film, but I did, however, not. I wasn't really connected to the woman from the call center either, and I didn't really. I wasn't connected to her relationship to the victim. And it's sad because I feel like every part with the victim and every part with the rapist, like they were really well made, and I really enjoyed watching them. But and the ending as well, you're right. I really agree with you, Excel. Like it felt like, oh, now they're just dancing and together and partying, and she's sleeping over. But like, it felt, yeah. I know. I wasn't that into it.
Nikita?
Hi, thank you. Well, since we've started talking about the ending, let's talk about it. Although obviously, I think we should focus on other bits as well. But I really disagree with Cecilia and Lucia. So first of all, I think Cecilia, that's not what happened. So yeah, she was asked, "Why do you think he did it?" And that's a usual question a police is asked to test the robustness of a story. Although I understand how uncomfortable it may be, but the alleged rapist at the time, from the police's point of view, now we know that he's a rapist. He was also like, he can't be asked why you did it because the police cannot presume that he did it. Although the police does ask, but why did she call the police? So they kind of, I don't think that they were playing with this contrast. And I think the ending when the rapist comes and seeks something is not problematic, but I think it just doesn't make sense to me because he wasn't coming for forgiveness. At least he never uttered any words of forgiveness, right? But we saw that he's burdened with guilt. And so does his or her story arc complete in any way with the question, but why you did it. It just doesn't make sense to me as the final question, because we as the audience kind of know why he did it. He kind of knows why he did it. He's just, you know, that tyrant who dehumanized you. Like, we all understand it. I understand how for you it's a kind of important question, but in what way does it finish the guilt arc, the victim's arc? It's just not powerful to me. It's not the question that I imagine her seeing as the most important question that she has had in her mind. It's not the question that he... I think it was a really weak ending for a film that started so strongly.
Miguel?
With regards to what you guys said, I don't really find a problem with not being connected with the characters, especially when I think that the movie presented a point of view which wasn't as personal as you know, as if it was going with a magnifying glass on the woman. I think the perspective was quite distant a bit. Therefore, I really don't find a problem with that. But I have one short point which I would like to be challenged upon at this point in time, because in hindsight, my biggest problem with the movie is that it went too light on the audience, as if we can't put two pieces of the puzzle together, especially with the flashback scenes. Um, I'm 2 days have passed from the movie, and I kept thinking, why did they show the rape scene? Why? I mean, in real life, let me give it an example. We don't know if she's right or she's wrong. Therefore, I would really like to know why the movie went easy on us. Why didn't it at least challenge our perceptions of what is right and what is wrong? It is as if the movie is what you get, and that's my 2 cents.
Likeria?
I want to add up on what you said. First of all, I want to say that I think we, like most of us, found the direction really magical, and the beginning was like we were holding up to this like from the first minute. But since approaching such a sensitive topic throughout the whole film, I feel like at the end, the director or the writer played it kind of safe, because first of all, I also did not like the portrayal of the rape scene, because what was important to me is that we have to believe the victim either way. Like, we shouldn't know, we shouldn't see. The whole point should be that this woman is reporting a sexual assault, so we have to believe it. And even though the whole process has been shown throughout the film, and how difficult that is for her, and how it's affecting all of the relationships in her life, with her child, with her ex-husband, with her sister, and all the post-traumatic stress disorder that brings, and all the anger, at the end, I feel like the question being asked and the specific like selection of words is not compatible to what we saw before, because like, asking why did you do it, not getting an answer, and then saying that not knowing why you did it is unacceptable. For me, it feels very off, because like, just imagine that he said, I did it because I was drunk. What would the woman respond to that? Like, the act itself, I think, is unacceptable. So because I get the intention of the filmmaker, and her stand is very obvious, at the end I feel like she kind of lost her very like strong stand, and like her being on the side of the victim for me.
Last four would be Jonas, Agnes, Cecilia, and Agap. Mila as well. Please keep it condensed so we can move on.
Of course.
Thank
you. I would like to build on what Miguel said real quick. As much as the film made me feel emotionally, more and more I thought about it, the structure, although while very much supporting this film, it is also, I feel like, the only way that this film can succeed in its mission. And that kind of disappoints me a little bit at this point, because I feel like at the beginning of the movie, we see, like during the first 15 minutes, I feel like we get that scene in the car which is quite like subjective in its own way from the perspective of the woman. But then again, straight after that, I think we get both the interrogation scenes, and I feel that really does it for me. We really get the actual answer for the story in the first 15 minutes, which is that the male is obviously lying, ergo he is at fault here. And this is why I feel like it creates this kind of false facade of doubt, just because the filmmakers want you to have the doubt, but they don't want it to be, yeah, it could have been made more authentic. I feel like they could have given us less, and with that they could have given us much more.
Agnes.
I also wanted to kind of stay in the same realm of, I mean, this film is very it is very manipulative, sorry. And I think kind of what you said there as well is, I think something that I really lacked here is the sense of confusion, because from personal experiences, it is confusing, I think. And here it's like an audience member, I don't get to feel confused. In a way, it's kind of transparent. I feel like the film in a way wants to take a strong stance, and in the moments it wants to confuse, it doesn't want to confuse you so much so that you take part in the wrong side. However, also like other choices, like with the call center character, it's also certain choices in that manipulation that I kind of also don't understand. We don't really get like the ground for, because we also spoke about that. I mean, yeah, I think you mentioned that clause in our deliberation previously. A call like this should be pretty, what's the word? Common. So it feels maybe a bit strange that this person would cling on to this certain case as well. However, I also wanted to just quickly touch upon the cinematography, which in a way I wouldn't maybe connect it to the manipulation, but I find it's a bit bland. And I understand that it's a realist depiction and it is very real, but I would like it to be more, it would suck me in more. I feel very, the colors, I understand that we're, it's a bleak subject, and the cinematography somehow also reflects that, but I would want to feel more immersed, and I feel like the cinematography sometimes falls a bit flat for me.
Thank you. Mila?
What I wanted to say, to reflect on Nikita's point of view, is that I think the final question of the film is if there is any kind of external validation for a situation like that. And I think that's the statement of the film, like, there is no external validation. The justice you are looking for could only come from inside. And I loved how the film portrayed this feeling. Like, we followed three different characters being trapped in this circle of looking for external validation, but they end up not having any kind of answers. And I loved it. I think it's super realistic, and I love the last scene. Like, they are being trapped in this survival mode, like living day by day. And I think that's the only conclusion or only solution that a director could give for a situation like that. Because, like, what could be the conclusion of what is the solution? I don't feel like it could be any better than this.
Cecilia?
Yeah, I wanted to touch upon some things that that people mentioned. For example, the rape scene. I would agree. Well, personally, I know that some people found themselves having doubt. I never had a doubt throughout the film. Since the beginning, I knew he was guilty and she was raped. I never doubted it. I knew it happened since the beginning. I was sure of it. But I'm gonna be fully honest. When they displayed the rape scene, I couldn't look. So I closed my eyes. And that's probably, and I didn't see any of it because I found it very triggering. So probably on this, I would agree. It didn't, because I didn't see it, because I actively chose not to see it. For me, the film the flow of the film was very, was never contradicting itself. And I didn't have an issue with it, but that's probably because I actively didn't watch it. So I would agree that probably I wouldn't have wanted the rape scene be displayed as well, because I personally didn't have a doubt at all. And again, regarding the relationship between the two women, the call center and the victim, some people found the relationship very constructed and not realistic. I would disagree. I thought it was very, I found it very special and and natural in a way, although they didn't know each other and the call center woman didn't have any way to trace, to find her. I believe that I didn't find it constructed. I really see how she would be haunted for so long, feeling so involved, but also that she helped and she saved her life in a way. But in the other way, she felt like she couldn't help fully defending her case and witnessing for her. And again, I really agree with Mila with the conclusion, because there is not really an answer on how she could possibly move on to this, and so it's gonna be open forever in her life, and it's like a scar that will be always open.
Thank you, Cecilia. Aga.
For me, this literal aspect of the film, like the scene with the rape, is its fatal flaw. Because all in all, I think Through the Night makes a very good use of non-verbal scenes, and it should have stayed that way in more of them. I really liked what Jonas said about false false sense of doubt. Yeah, I thought it was a very, very good phrase. And I didn't feel genuinely confused whenever the director wanted me to feel confused. I felt confused about my own confusion. I felt as if someone artificially injected confusion into my veins, and I was just wondering what is going on. Why am I feeling this way? Not why is it happening on the screen. So for me, it's a no. And I think it's a very good it's a very strong movie that does not bring anything new to the table. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't have happened. It's great that it happened. It's great that it was made. I just don't think that it's good enough for us to award it, purely because it did not make me feel or see anything new in the conversation. And I think the film that we decide to award should have that aspect in whatever way, shape, or form we deem appropriate. But I think here it was just not present.
Thank you, Aga. João Pedro, would you like to conclude?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, perhaps, like on what Agnes said. She used the word manipulative. I think this film is really manipulative. Of course, cinema is always manipulative. It's always about manipulation, and that is also the vision of a director. And but I think this film does it in a very, for me, ethically and morally doubtful way. So you know my opinion about this film. I'm not going to say it again. And because it was something that we didn't speak about, I didn't speak about, and you mentioned here, like the character of the 911 woman. For me, it's totally, I simply don't believe not believe it, because it's the character. It's even a little bit developed. You see her son, and just for me, it feels very much that to portray her as a good person. That I think Rahel, you mentioned women's solidarity in the end, which I think it's a beautiful thing, but in an important issue. But I just feel that the director just directs you into that feeling, and not. It's really not, for me. It's totally unbelievable, that, especially that character makes me really go out of the. Why do we care for the story about her story with her son? Oh, come on.
Thank you, João Pedro. And the third film to be discussed today is Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person. Axel, please.
For this film, I felt like it was probably the only film, or at least one of the very few films, where we really felt joyfully invited to take part in the, like, almost in the filmmaking process. I felt like we had a true collective experience watching it, and not only because we all know the reference to the vampire and how it plays with it. during the previous debates, some of us said that it was maybe a safe film, and yeah, I also think it does take risk because it raises topics that are very sensitive, such as depression, suicide, and also euthanasia at the end that I didn't think about until yesterday. And so engaging audience in such, making this a comedy out of these topics, to me was a very big risk because it could have been unbearable to watch, really. And I thought it was also visually strong without any sort of arrogance. The editing was very good, and I feel it was one of the few films that also fully took the duration it deserved. There was no rhythm problem. I felt it was very organic in terms of editing. But I think, Svetla, you mentioned it yesterday, or I don't remember when, the weakness in terms of characters and how stereotypical they are. It's true that I felt like you really expect all of their reaction, especially the guy that the cousin is dating at some point. He's a very funny character, but you know kind of what he's going to say or the jokes he's going to make. So it made it quite predictable at some point.
Jonas?
Thank you. I'll start off by saying I love the film, although considering the themes it handled, as you mentioned, depression, suicide. Also, I didn't think you mentioned PTSD, which was explicitly mentioned in the film. That there was one theme that I feel is really important to young people, who is obviously the demographic of this film, that wasn't handled that well, and that was bullying. I felt like the bullying aspect of it was very one-sided, very superficial, and I felt that it was just a device used to reach a certain plot point that I won't mention right now, but I believe everyone knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, the music was great. There was a lot of positive aspects to it, but I feel like it was just this one, not simple, but one thing that they definitely had paid attention to, but everything else had been paid attention to more than this. And I feel like bullying is a very important subject to address seriously and address constructively. And I feel like this film didn't do that at all. And this is probably my one big gripe with this film.
Nikita?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't look for prescription from films, and I think I like how they didn't care much. So okay, I'll go and kill the bullets. It was a really funny thing for me to watch it. And you guys know that I was a big fan, and especially I like the humanist message of the film, the message of, stand by what you believe in and don't care about the consequences until you have to care about the consequences, and then you'll have to come up with a solution that will align with your morality. But yesterday, and now it will sound quite rogue, I was thinking, what new can I say about this film that I loved so much? Because we've been talking about this for a week now. And I realized there might be a layer there that went unnoticed. So I don't know if you follow Canadian politics and news much, but it's one of the most polarized Western nations these days, especially if you were following their COVID response. It's like insanely atomized, polarized, anti-vaccination movement, and the establishment that was, in my opinion, I would say anti-humanist at times, in how they cracked down the vaccination convoy at the border. And I think this movie is about COVID vaccination. And I think what it does so well is that you don't really know who the vampires are here. So I think it's a good advocacy for both, saying, no, I don't feel like doing something bodily, like biting, I don't want to inject something in myself. I don't want to bite. And so at the same time, it's a statement of, guys, let's stay humans and have a dialogue. Let's, don't put people out of work and in jail, but at the same time, let's also not say, no, I won't get a vaccine and my granny will die. I can't now, to finish, I can't imagine that this film didn't have this subtone to it. And this makes me love it even more.
Adam?
I think that out of all the movies we have seen, I want to say that to me, this is the strongest director's vision. I think they built a world around a character which can only exist in darkness. But at the same time, we see the world through this character. So even though the movie is visually often dark, there's still quite a bit of softness to it because of the main character. And I think that it has an amazing set design. I think the art department did an amazing job on this film, which is something I never even thought about with the other movies. And I'm a big fan of horror and comedy, and I think it's a very tough subgenre to nail, because you might go, a lot of horror comedies do this thing where they become too quirky and they say, oh, look at how crazy we are, and then it stops being funny. And I think that this movie handled such a tough genre beautifully. And also, I am really puzzled by some of the previous criticisms that this movie plays it safe, because it opens with a family murdering a clown during a birthday party of a little child. So I think that this movie does have a cruel side. I think it does show its teeth, whether it's innocent people dying, you see an animal death on screen, and I say cruelty, but I mean it in a good way. It's a fun cruelty that this movie has.
We have about 10 last minutes, so please be as condensed as you can. Iman?
I really like this film. I also think films definitely are in conversation with the politics of the time, but Nikita, I think that's a bit of a stretch. But we'll just have to ask the filmmaker, because you might be dead on. I actually think you're just probably reading the wrong headline, because I think you're right. Canada is very polarized, and over the past 5 years, there probably have been a lot of talk about sort of trans issues. And I'm not saying this film is about that, but there is something about identity and fitting in there as well that might be touched on. I'm not going to add anything more to the conversation. I can't speak on it, but maybe there is some political headline that could be inserted into this film. But kind of stepping back as well, I think we were talking about, this film's place in cinema, and people were maybe kind of worried about this, but I think this film does sit in the horror genre very well. And although it's about a very, very, very niche subject, it does appeal to the masses, and I think that's a really positive point for the film.
Likeria?
Thank you. First of all, I want to say that I love that film, and I want to reply to Jonas about what he said about bullying. When the girl kills the bully, the guy says that you turn into a vampire whenever I'm in danger. So I really like how the focus is again on affection and not kind of revenge, because she is trying to protect him most of the times, and that really sticks to her character traits, because she's a humanist vampire. So I feel that really stands out for me, and my most favorite part of the film is the bonding that the two main characters have, and how through their problems and all the dark sides of their life, they manage to find a person to be their safe place, even though they don't know each other, and to kind of try and be themselves where they can be. Yeah.
Dora?
Right. Again, because people keep declaring love for certain films, I just want it to be memorized in the whole of eternity that I personally did not dislike this film, and I was the person that Ewan was referring to in terms of just being sent into an incredible fear of for the future of cinema. And this film did make me worry a lot in terms of, I wondered a lot about whether this film belongs in the Giornate. Not to say that there shouldn't be any room for funny, lighthearted films in this section, or it shouldn't, genre filmmaking doesn't belong on a festival. There should be more openness to that. But I do feel that in a way, film festivals and film festival selections, I think they are charged with an act of encouragement in what they're selecting. And I kept wondering, does this film need to be encouraged through validation of a festival? I think this kind of filmmaking will be just all right whatever the case will be, wherever it will be projected, it'll probably get like on Netflix, and it'll be that will be its very nice home base. So I think this film will be just fine, and people will like it regardless of everything. Whereas a lot of the other films in Giornata, I do think need this incentive coming from critics, from film programmers, from the audience, to just validate that that kind of cinema can still be alive, and we need to encourage it through awards, for whatever not. But I think, I'm just thinking cinema for the masses will exist for the masses, but there are other more nuanced films that will just escape, unfortunately.
Last three would be Maria, Cecilia, and Aga.
I had a good experience when I was watching the film, that's for sure. But one thing that I'm just, during all of the meetings and talking with other people, I keep thinking about is that I feel like for this film, we're giving it the benefit of the doubt, and we are also cutting it a lot of slack. And I find it a bit problematic, because I feel this contrast of like, we have two interesting films, the two other films that are dealing with really important and meaningful narratives, and I feel like we're trying to be nitty-gritty about all of the technical things that could be better, but then also we have this really entertaining and pleasurable film, but we are kind of like, yeah, like it had some problems, but also like it's not that big of a deal because we had like a good time and blah, blah, blah. So I feel a bit confused by that, because I feel like it's definitely a comfort movie. Like, even though you're talking about how it's like talks about themes of like bullying, suicide, and everything, I feel like just because of the genre, they get absolutely underdeveloped. All of the serious like depression and things, like I don't get anything new about it. I don't know anything new about suicide from this film. I feel like it's just like, I don't feel like we delve into the topic at all. So how I want to close on that is that I feel like it's a comfort movie that we all have our guilty pleasures. We have rom-coms, we have, I don't know, horror films and everything, and they make us feel a certain way. But like with comfort food, it's not like we can make ourselves like a mac and cheese, but at the same time, it's not like we're gonna give it a Michelin star. I feel like it's made for pleasure, but I don't know if that's really where we want to delve into. So I do find it a bit problematic. I don't think that we should give the award to this film, and I feel like we should cut it a bit less slack than we're doing at the moment. So, yeah.
Cecilia.
I would like to respond to this last comment. So first of all, I really love the film, and what I love the most about it was it's kind of like neurodivergent, feel like seeing this neurodivergent vampire that is basically cannot function, in their society and in the family she lives in. So she feels dysfunctional, and it's the same with the human character. He's also technically a dysfunctional character in his society, but the message that I found in the film is like finding a way together to become functional and not feel dysfunctional anymore, which is a different path to like suicide or like death for both, because that would have been the other option for both of the characters. I don't think it was predictable, because throughout the film I wasn't expecting the ending. I wasn't, which touched the topic of euthanasia, and it's a really dark, not dark, it's like a really, can be really heavy topic, and I love the way it talked about it. But in response to what Dora and Maria said, it's true, this film is probably more accessible to the wider public, and all the audience loved it. They had a great reaction after watching the film, and it's true that it will be very successful. But I don't think that is a good enough reason to say that it shouldn't receive an award, because I still believe that he was extremely unique and interesting in the way it represented this topic. I personally haven't seen it done before in this way. It's true, it adopted more like pop culture language, like the vampires and the dark gothic kind of style, but it still really was different and standing out from other films and TV series that use these topics. And also, I really liked, I don't think that being accessible for the outer public is necessarily a negative thing. It's true that other films that were in the Giornate probably are gonna struggle more to make their way in the industry and like to be seen by people. But I mean, often I feel
Cecilia,
like
I'm sorry, I need you to take it to the port, please.
Yes.
Ahead, because then we have a couple more interventions, so
Yes,
others can talk.
yeah, I just think that being accessible isn't a negative thing, and like wanting to speak to a wider audience, I don't see it as a downside of this film.
Thank you. Aga?
I don't think we're cutting it any slack. I think it's the other way around, and we're cutting slack the highbrow movies simply because they deal with more serious subjects. Therefore, we tend to maybe not ignore the flaws, but choose not to take them as seriously as here. Because here, I don't think lightheartedness and like the commercial success that I hope also this film will succeed is any sort of flaw. And in the same way, I also don't think that we should award a film just to like push it forward and to encourage it. I think this genre needs to be encouraged to be taken more seriously because it absolutely deserves it. Like you can see that the creators poured their heart and all of their capabilities to such a great extent. I think in its own genre, subgenre, whatever, I think this film is exemplary and it's insightful and it's entertaining. And how often does that happen? And I wanted to say that it single-handedly reinvigorated my joy from participating in this festival because it did not pretend to be anything that it's not. And is the genre going to be okay? It's probably going to be okay. And, you know, films are going to keep popping up, but will they be good? I'm not so sure because we don't award them, because we don't take them seriously. And I think if we want to see more high quality lighthearted, I don't know, whatever movies, I think this is the way to go, and this is the reason why we should award this award.
Thank you. João Pedro, please, could you conclude the debate?
I'd just like to adding on what Dora said. I think it's an important issue what he said, but as far as I know, I don't think this film is still bought by Netflix, but there's like in the main competition, there are several films produced by Netflix. So, and I don't think that these films are often, a film like this is often selected to a festival because exactly of it's apparently light-hearted, how do you say that? Light-hearted? That's a weird word, difficult word to say. And so I think I was really happy that the film was in this selection, also because of the diversity of the selection. And well, I just wanted to have this.
Thank you. I'm going to expose the crystal ball, which is an unmistakable sign of the fact that the voting is about to start. Stan.
So you will be handed out papers by Ilaria and by Gaia. You should. So the vote is going to be a secret today. You all have pens, most of you. So vote for the film. Be very, very explicit in the title. Write it well. No jokes. It's not necessary. And then I will go through the two lanes with the crystal ball. If you have any question, now is a good time to ask them to me. But I think it was all very clear.
Without wanting to suggest anything, this is just to make your life easier. If you go for the last of the three films, you don't have to write the whole title. Just the first two words are fine. Thank you.
have to fold it? We don't have to fold it.
21 is 2/3, yes.
So do we have all votes in the ball? Usually, the way we do it is that I read every single one so that you can keep control. Milk. You better get the glasses. The Humanist Vampire. The Humanist Vampire. Milk. Milk. Humanist Vampire. 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 Vampire Humanist. Humanist Vampire. Humanist Vampire. Milk. Milk. Thank you, GdA, for folding. Through the night. Into the night. Through the night. It's like there's a song from Twin Peaks. Humanist Vampire. Humanist Vampire. Humanist Vampire. I'm sorry. Through the night. Humanist Vampire. Humanist Vampire. Humanist Vampire. Milk. 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 And the final one, through the night.
Which 8 votes for milk, 4 for through the night, and 19 for vampire, which means we go to round 2 between milk and vampire. Same exercise, only 2 films, 1 vote for each, 5 for Joao.
We have to get rid of these so that doesn't upset.
Here, yeah. Too familiar, you know.
It's a showdown.
Thank you.
But there's a special audience support for John Malcolm, right? Yeah. And there's also.
Wow.
Please don't use yourself during the vote. Please.
So now it's pure magic.
Yeah.
So here we go again. Humanist vampire. Humanist vampire. Humanist vampire. Humanist vampire. Humanist vampire. Milk. Milk. Humanist vampire. Milk. Humanist vampire. Milk. Humanist vampire. Humanist vampire. Humanist vampire. Humanist vampire. Milk. Humanist vampire. Humanist vampire. Milk. Humanist vampire. 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 Milk. Milk. Humanist vampire. Humanist vampire. And finally, humanist vampire. Milk has received 8 votes. Humanist vampire seeking consenting suicidal person is the winner of the Giornata degli Autori Directors Award 2023. Congratulations. And before I pass the mic to the General Delegate of Giornata, Mr. Giorgio Gozzetti, I would like to thank you all for another amazing experience. It was very enriching, very pleasant, and it was a really, really great pleasure. Thank you.
Mr. President, João, Karel, our mentor, our point of reference during all these days, our delighted jurors. On behalf of Gaia Furrer, Artistic Director, and all the Artistic Committee, I have to thank you all for your passions, for your use of cell phones, and for the passion you expressed during this discussion. We maintain the idea that a public and final discussion through all the members of this incredible jury, it's an exercise of transparency, pleasure, and passion for cinema. I spent a certain time hearing all of you, and I was really impressed by the passion and the attention you had for all the films. And in the end, even the count of the votes can be a moment in which you express yourself. And this is the reason why it's so interesting, even for us, for our future, a moment like this. As you know, some of you, according to your preference, will join us in order to pre-select the films for the next edition of Giornata degli Autori. So you must be, in a way, involved with us and involved in the Lux Prize Public Award. You will be not just the ambassadors of the United Europe, but also for the Giornata degli Autori. So thank you a lot to all of you, but thanks especially to João and Karel, because they are professionals, because they tried to help you, to discuss, to encourage, and to promote your passion. Thank you so much.
We can continue sitting like that. You want to chat more? But that's it. Thank you.
Guys, before you go, please.